Hello, my name is Morgan Gray, and welcome back to the Afrocentric Podcast.
Can she put that question been harassing me in the mind? This bitch is fine. I done came to the club about 50 times. Now can I play with your panties?
We don't funk with racism. We don't funk with people who don't support the LGBTQ plus community. And baby, we damn sure don't funk with anybody who don't love a beautiful black queen, baby. You see this tape.
When they go low, I go low.
You don't let nobody act black and then go home and be white.
I got 2 pistols and a pit bull. Me. That's all I need.
It only takes a little bit of white brainwash to activate the cool chip in the average Negro.
You think Harriet Tubman was walking around with a fucking nice shiny fucking dress on with a fucking crown on her head when she was taking slaves to freedom?
And a lot of white folk have demonstrated eloquently that they don't have no sense.
And we are back with the Afrocentric Podcast. I am more than elated to be here. I know you jokers been waiting for me like the 1st and the 15th. Now, for those who do not know, the title of this episode is Freestyle 2. When they go low. Now, this episode will be challenging Michelle Obama's famous quote, when they go low, we go high, and it explores how the Black community has shifted away from this philosophy. This episode examines instances where non-Black individuals and communities have engaged in disrespectful or harmful behavior, and how the Black community has responded with even more forceful reactions. Now, this podcast delves into the politics of respectability, resistance, as well as anti-Blackness, and it presents examples of people of color and white individuals who, quote, go low, as well as the Black communities responding by going even lower. Now, these key cases that we will be talking about in this episode will be Jasmine Crockett. We'll be talking about the Montgomery Brawl, as well as OJ Simpson in the context of Rodney King. So if I were you, I would stick around to the end. Now, this thought-provoking episode really does aim to spark a controversial conversation about the evolving strategies of resistance within the Black community and the rejection of respectability politics in the face of persistent racism and discrimination. Now, if this is something that you want to hear more of this, make sure to stay updated on our latest episodes and continue the conversation. We do encourage you to go and subscribe to our podcast because your support is so crucial in amplifying the voices and experience shared here on the Afrocentric Podcast. We value your feedback. Please take a moment to leave a comment or a review. Your thoughts and input are essential in shaping the content we deliver and ensuring that we address topics that resonate with our audience. I want to thank you guys so much for choosing to be Afrocentric today. Together, we can continue to shed light on important issues, celebrate Black culture, and work towards a more inclusive future. Now, stay connected, stay engaged, and stay informed. Make sure to subscribe, comment, and let your voices be heard. Now, with that in mind, let's jump into the next segment.
During our time in the White House, we've had the joy of watching them grow from bubbly little girls into poised young women. A journey that started soon after we arrived in Washington, when they set off for their first day at their new school. I will never forget that winter morning as I watched our girls, just 7 and 10 years old, pile into those black SUVs with all those big men with guns. And I saw their little faces pressed up against the window, and the only thing I could think was, what have we done? See, because at that moment, I realized that our time in the White House would form the foundation for who they would become. And how well we managed this experience could truly make or break them. That is what Barack and I think about every day as we try to guide and protect our girls through the challenges of this unusual life in the spotlight. How we urge them to ignore those who question their father's citizenship or faith. How we insist that the hateful language they hear from public figures on TV does not represent the true spirit of this country. How we explain that when someone is cruel or acts like a bully, you don't stoop to their level. No, our motto is, when they go low, we go high.
Let's have a brief discussion about Michelle Obama's quote, when they go low, we go high. Now, when it was 2016 when Michelle Obama said this infamous quote,
that when someone is cruel or acts like a bully, you don't stoop to their level. No, our motto is, when they go low, we go high.
And the quote, when they go low, we go high, truly embodies the philosophy of responding to negativity, criticism, or unfair treatment with dignity and moral integrity. Now, this phrase gained its popularity and prominence during her speech at the 2016 Democratic National Convention while she was endorsing Hillary Clinton. It was intended to be a guide for handling bullies and adversity. Now, the quote, let me break down the etymology, let me break down the quote. When they, who is they? They is the people that is not of color. They could be anyone outside of the Black community. Right now, we're seeing a rise of the diaspora, the Caribbeans, the Nigerians, the over there in the UK, United Kingdom. That's they. Anybody that ain't like us, okay? Go low refers to easy, divisive tactics such as using fear, being cruel, or acting like a bully. And it's often used as a short-term approach, and it's driven by ego, anger, or vengefulness. Now, when we, that's us, the people. God shows a few. The 144,000. That's us, the Negroes, the colored folks in the Americas. Go high. This phrase, go high, doesn't mean suppressing the emotions or ignoring hurts. Instead, it involves responding in a way that reflects the situation rather than the problem. It means, according to Michelle Obama, considering the bigger picture and one's responsibility, especially for public figures. Now, Michelle Obama's philosophy emphasizes maintaining urgency and passion while finding purpose in one's emotions. It's about creating substantial, unifying solutions rather than quick fixes and moving forward constructively rather than perpetuating negativity. Michelle was trying to stress that this approach is about recognizing one's influence and using it positively, particularly as a role model or for the next generation. Again, when Michelle say we go high, that don't mean, to be a saint or losing your justified passion. Instead, it's really about channeling your inner emotions into something that's purposeful and solution-oriented. Now, the philosophy in and of itself, when they go low, we go high, calls for responding
to negativity with integrity, focusing on a long-term solution and positive change rather than engaging in destructive retaliatory behavior. It's real sweet. It's really cut. It's tied up in a little bowl. It's in a nice box. The problem is that niggas don't agree. In fact, the whole thesis of this episode is to show you all, the Black community's subtle shift away from mindsets like this. And in the quote, in and of itself, when they go low, we go high, really represents the Black community shifting away, and it reflects rolling frustrations with systemic injustice and a desire for more immediate, forceful responses to persistent racism and discrimination. Why? Because niggas is tired. Niggas is exhausted. They are. We tired of taking the high road. We are, and really and honestly, if you know anything, you really can't blame us. Tired of taking the high road. They tired of turning the other cheek. So we gonna, this what the white man has always told us when we went to his school. He said, repeating the same things and expecting different results is what? That's insanity. So why keep on doing it over and over again? Why? If my right hand offends my left, then I need to cut it off. Why wait for tomorrow for something we can do today? Why be passive? So we want something different, so we try something new. Okay? So this evolution in approach stems from a few things. Let's go over them really quick. Number one, the Black community is shifting away from this philosophy because the disillusionment with respectability politics. That's something we're going to get more in depth with later on in this episode. But many in the Black community have come in view that the go hard approach is ineffective in combating deeply entrenched racial inequality, right? Number two, the Black community is looking for urgency for tangible change. We want something we could feel, something we could see within our lifetimes. We don't want to, be the hopes and the dreams. We don't want the hopes and the dreams. We want it, and we want it right now. Okay? There's an increasing sense that maintaining dignity in the face of injustice has yielded insignificant progress, leading to a demand for more direct action. Number three, empowerment through assertiveness. A new generation of activists and leaders are embracing a more confrontational tactic as means of asserting their rights and demanding accountability. I guess, my generation say we not our ancestors. I guess they really meant that because they standing on business. They standing on big business. And we're going to talk about that towards the end of the episode. What is my community? What is this new era of activists, politicians, and leaders doing that's different from what my predecessors did in the past? Well, we're going to talk about it. Finally, number four, the recognition of historical precedents, drawing inspiration from more militant civil rights figures. Some argue that the significant social change often requires destructive and forceful methods. Lastly, response to escalating provocations. In an era of heightened racial tension and overt displays of bigotry, many feel that a more robust and immediate response is necessary to counteract aggression and protect our community's interests. There is a shift that represents a strategic revolution of how to effectively combat racism and achieve social justice, and it is prioritized by seeing visible and physical results over perceived moral high ground.
There's also a chapter dedicated to when they go low, we go high.
Well, people still keep asking me, you still mean that?
Yeah. But that was an epic line. That was just it's stuck in everyone's
Yeah.
head. Did you realize how powerful that would be years after?
No, I didn't know I'd be known for that line, but I'm proud of that. People ask me, do I ever go low? And yeah, I go low. Go low a lot of times, but I think for people who have a platform, who are being looked up to, we have a responsibility to stay high because kids are watching us. If you need to go low at home. Do it with your kitchen table, with your spouse. But we set the example because leaders set the tone. And we felt what it's felt like to be led with low. And it didn't feel great. That's why it's important. It's a practice. It's a habit. It's something we show the next generation. That doesn't mean we settle. That doesn't mean we're complacent. It means we think before we speak because words matter. And I still believe that. And I try the best that I can when I'm in the public eye, when I know that kids are watching, to stay high because high begets high.
That's right.
Now, before we jump into these very complex conversations, there are a few words that we need to define so that you guys can fully grasp the essence of this conversation. And those three words are resistance, anti-Blackness, and the politics of respectability. And those words are the politics of respectability is interchangeable with respectability politics. They're the same words, okay? Now, when we are talking about resistance is the refusal to accept or comply with oppressive systems, often through active opposition or protest. Now, personally, all the African communities throughout the diaspora have perfected resistance. There are different forms of resistance. There are day-to-day resistance, things that people do on a daily basis in order to push back against oppression. So often documented is the breaking of tools like hoes, rakes, poisoning, and food. That's not day-to-day though. Pretending to be sick. In the Caribbean, there are examples of enslaved people working on tobacco farms who would purposely overstack or overpack the cases of tobacco to make it seem like they had did more work, but they had not. Then you have active protests, rebellions. Those are different forms of resistance. But even mentally, because you can resist spiritually, mentally, as well as physically. It is always surrounded by knowing what is right and refusing to accept different forms of oppression. Now, the next term is anti-Blackness. Anti-Blackness is a form of racism significantly and specifically directed against Black people, and it is deeply rooted in systemic and cultural practices. Anti-Blackness can come from anybody, and that also includes Black people. Okay? Anti-Blackness it's a mess, child. Nonetheless, the final phrase is the politics of respectability. If you want more information about the politics of respectability, I suggest you listen to Freestyle 8, using the master's tools to dismantle the master's house, where I talk about the bourgeoisie, Black middle class, and the layman people, or those who are unfortunately less or more impoverished. Okay, so I'm going to give a brief synopsis. All right. Get it together. I'm going to give you guys a brief synopsis of the politics of respectability. I'm not covering all of it. We've done tons of episodes on it, okay? So the politics of respectability is a concept that emerged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries within African American communities. And what it refers to a strategy adopted by marginalized groups particularly Black Americans, to counter negative stereotypes and gain social acceptance by conforming to mainstream social norms and values. Okay, so in essence, the politics of respectability or respectability politics is a relatively new word, but the actions and behaviors around the politics of respectability have been around since the late 1800s, early 1900s. Okay, a great example of the politics of respectability is Rosa Parks. So it is, I would say, now common knowledge that Rosa Parks was not the first Black person to sit in the front of the bus. A younger girl was actually sitting in the front of another public bus, and she was also arrested. They decided, and by they I mean the Black community, the Black bourgeoisie, those who were the face of the civil rights movement, decided that they did not want to use her because she was pregnant during the time period and she was very, very young, and they felt like using her would not help them combat negative stereotypes and or gain social acceptance. Okay, so in so many words, Rosa Parks sitting on the bus, although it was an act of resistance, it was staged. But that doesn't take away from the fact that she did put her life in danger and at risk. It just wasn't authentic. Okay, so when they requested, or when they decided that Rosa Parks would be sitting on the bus, they purposely made her dress in very old maiden type of clothes.
They were old maiden type of shoes, and she said that those shoes were meant to be worn on a beautiful woman. So if that's the case, she should have put them back on the rack, and she should never even purchase them because she was unqualified to own those shoes if that's the case.
She was very, very young. Rosa was very young when she sat in the bus. Because you gotta remember, Rosa Parks just died in like 2005. And by the way, she died poor. Nonetheless, Rosa had on that nice cardigan with the big bifocal glasses with the bump and curl at the end, the skirt ankle length with the socks and the good walking shoes, baby. They did that on purpose because they knew she was gonna be in a newspaper. They knew that this moment would be commemorated, so they wanted to dress her in a way that was strategic, in a way that would pull on the heartstrings or maybe create more empathy from the normal white American viewer. Let me provide a little bit more of a historical context. Now, when we're talking about the politics of respectability, it was coined by a historian by the name of Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham, and it was coined in her 1993 book about the Black woman's movement in the Black Baptist Church. And the book described the efforts of Black Americans to prove their moral worth and deservingness of equal treatment by adopting the behaviors, the dress, the manners that truly align with the middle class white standards of respectability. Now, there are a few things you need to understand about respectability politics in this concept of when they go low, we go high. Number one, when we're talking about respectability politics, it places an emphasis on the personal responsibility and self-improvement of the Black person. So, yes, that's victim blaming. It's your responsibility to make sure that those who are not of your culture understand that you are just like them. You need to maintain your respectability at all times, everywhere you go. You have to suppress your Black culture and push it down. You need to dress, you need to speak, you need to believe the religion in which they gave you. Am I missing anything? And you need to eat the peanut butter jelly sandwiches and a nice cold glass of milk in order to get their respect. And that is your personal walk with self-improvement. You are not a good Negro unless you have conformed. Number two, the adherence to conservative moral values. And this standard of the politics of respectability is something that really, really still impacts the Black community today. I and a lot of other Black people are of the moral belief that a lot of African Americans are deeply conservative. I feel like this presidential race is they're showing me just how unserious they are, especially when it comes to religion, thoughts about women's reproductive health and reproductive rights, LGBTQ, homosexual marriage, very conservative on those viewpoints, very conservative when it comes to police involvement. So, in order to adhere to the politics of respectability and white social norms, there is an emphasis on being conservative when it comes to your moral values, your thoughts, and behaviors. Number 3, the promotion of education and professional achievement. This is something that the Black community has deeply strayed away from when we are talking about African American men. That was seen during W.E.B. Du Bois' talented 10th, and that was a key aspect of the Black bourgeoisie class, is to migrate away from trades, working with your hands, and to become more educated. Educated in the white man's universities and thoughts and school of class. It is always said, especially in higher echelon class, like higher echelon places, like to be a well-educated, well-rounded person is to be educated on Greek history, literature, and mythology. Like, and to me, Greek mythology, literature is the antithesis, the apex, the root of like white culture. And I feel like you can really see the way that a lot of white communities kind of go about living their lives and how they go about thinking and their actions to this day based off of their time period. That and Rome. Next is going to be careful attention to appearance and public behavior. You know, don't be so loud. Don't eat fried chicken and watermelon in public. You know, people really don't do that. They really don't do that, especially the bougie ones. I only eat fish and salmon. That's them. Don't eat no oxtails. Negro, please. And distance yourself from people who do. And finally, distancing from negative stereotypes associated with Black culture. So historically, this approach was seen as a way to challenge racist perceptions and demonstrate that Black people were worthy of equal rights and opportunity. And it was particularly prominent during the Civil Rights Movement, where leaders often emphasized dignified behavior and nonviolent resistance. But let me tell you something. During the Civil Rights Movement, them jokers was marching from Memphis, Tennessee to Jackson, Mississippi in three-piece church suits, kitten heels, dresses, gloves, bumping curls. Niggas nowadays coming out to protest in slides and sweats and tank tops and booty shorts and crop tops and the things, white beaters and things. I mean, at least put some tennis shoes on, boo. What if they get to shoot out there? But you know, that was to be expected. They got out there in their Sunday's best. Oh my God! During that bus boycott that they did in Montgomery, Alabama, them jokers for months, they did not take the bus, and they were either carpooling or walking to work. Them jokers was walking to work in high heels, slacks, button-down shirts, good belts, shirts tucked in. You know, they ironed their shirts and their pants with good starch, with good creases in the things. Like, that blows my mind. Like, my God, today. Now, let's talk about the reasons why Black people have rejected the politics of respectability in contemporary Black discourse. So in recent years, there have been a growing amount of criticisms and rejections of the politics of respectability, and it's for several reasons. Number one, a lot of African Americans argue that it is ineffective. I'm one of those African Americans. Many argue that despite decades of respectable behavior, systemic racist pursuits suggests. Ooh, Lord, I'm sorry. Some just okay. Many African Americans argue that the politics of respectability is simply ineffective. I'm one of those people. Many argue that despite decades of respectable behavior, systemic racist pursuits, it suggests that the strategy does not address the root causes of inequality. And I feel like specifically today, because racism is not on, it's systemic. So, like, nowadays people not going outside, they still are, but it's not at the rate in which you would think it would be. They're not going outside and calling you the N-word to your face and threatening to lynch you, although the KKK is rumored to be dropping flyers down there in Memphis, Tennessee, telling the whites in the nice HOA neighborhoods to come join the movement. They are literally doing it right now. But is more systemic. There are issues built within the fabric and the fibers of the country that need to be addressed, like jail, Black African American people, like especially with, like, I feel like the Donald Trump case is a great example of that. You got Donald Trump, who has been convicted for 31 felony charges, and yet he's still able to run for president, where a majority of the people in jails are African Americans, right? And majority of them are in jail for nonviolent crimes, right? But they're convicted felons, and they don't have the right to vote, to get nice housing. They don't have the right to leave or be able to go to certain countries. There are so many things that happens to felons after they receive that identification that they're felons. So many, like, life stops in a way. And then you have a president who literally puts so many people in harm's way for so many different reasons, and yet he's still able to run for president. So that's like a example of systemic racism. It's within the country. Okay. So me sitting up here thinking and acting and dressing and behaving and tap dancing and cooning and clowning for the white man, it doesn't address the systemic issues going on in the country. Number two, victim blame and respectability politics can imply that discrimination is the fault of those who do not conform to mainstream standards rather than addressing systemic issues. And like we say here at the Afrocentric Podcast, being a Black person is not a monolithic experience. You should not expect every African American person to act one certain way. There is an array of niggas. I tell you, from sea to shining sea, everybody weird and everybody different, and that's okay. That's the beauty and the complexity of our culture. Okay, so we should not all expect African Americans to be loud, ghetto, raunchy, broke, poor, and we also should not expect African Americans to be uppity, bougie, highly educated, segregated. Once they receive money, they move off and leave. You should expect in and everything when you see niggas, okay? Because we're not a monolithic experience, and it's also not our responsibility to make other groups of people view us as a human being. That should be the baseline. That's the bare minimum. Number three, cultural erasure. It often requires suppressing or hiding aspects of Black culture deemed unacceptable by white standards. And that is very, very true. There are a lot of African American holidays that did not become accepted by the white community. And as time went on, they've dissipated. They've just A great example is Pink Star. Let me see if I can find the information on Pink Star.
A few moments later.
Easter is considered the oldest African American holiday. It was originally a Dutch celebration brought to the Hudson Valley in the 17th century, and it evolved to become primarily an African American celebration by the early 1800s. The name Pinkster is derived from Pinksteren, the Dutch word for Pentecost. While not directly related to Pink Star, the holiday was associated with pink flowers, particularly azaleas, which is known as the Pinkster flowers. Now, a Pink Star celebration includes music, dancing, games, sports, and markets where people sold various goods, including berries, herbs, oysters, and flowers. The holiday provided a rare opportunity for enslaved and free Americans to reunite with family and friends, celebrate their culture, and enjoy a brief respite from their otherwise difficult lives. Unfortunately, Pink Star celebrations were banned in Albany in 1811 due to fears stemming from slave rebellions. However, there have been recent efforts to revive and commemorate the important piece of African American cultural history. Okay, cultural erasure. Motherfuckers are scared that if you get niggas all in one room, they gonna get to talk about their freedom. You got the freed ones and the ones in bondage come together talking about how hard their life is.
Negro, please.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. We got to get rid of this. So throughout time, and because of the politics of respectability, there is a suppression and a hiding of aspects of different parts of Black culture. The next one is a class divide. The emphasis on middle class values can alienate and further marginalize working class or poor Black individuals. Number 5 is reinforcing oppressive systems. By accepting and promoting dominant cultural norms, it may adherently reinforce various systems of oppression that it seeks to challenge. Number 6, limiting authentic expression. It can stifle individual and cultural expression in a favor of narrow definitions of accepted behavior. Ignoring intersectionality. Respectability politics often fails to address this complex intersection of race, gender, and sexuality. They're trying to get rid of DEI and the teaching of stuff like this all together. Shifting of respectability and responsibility. It places the burden of ending discrimination on the oppressed rather than dismantling oppressive systems. Okay, so contemporary Black discourse increasingly emphasizes the importance of systemic change, celebrating cultural diversity, as well as rejecting the notion that conformity to white standards is a necessity and is necessary for equality. Many activists and scholars argue for embracing the full spectrum of Black identities and experiences rather than trying to fit into a narrow definition of respectability. Yeah, now it's time for us to get into a little history. Let's talk about the non-Blacks going low. Yeah, because she said when they go low, and some will sit up here and tell us we ain't never stooped low. We ain't never. Y'all just making stuff up. Y'all just hearing what they taught in school and they lying. Okay, well, I'm going to sit up here and lie. So let's talk about the post-emancipation era, also known as the Reconstruction era. So the Reconstruction era was during the period of 1865 to 1877. And the issue during the Reconstruction era was lynching for African Americans. So lynching emerged as this horrific form of racial terror and violence used to intimidate and control Black Americans. So let me tell you a few key points about lynching during this time period to help you guys like really understand and grasp the fullness of lynching. Now, I think when people think of lynching, they just think about a rope around somebody's neck and them hanging from a tree. lynching is all of the horrific acts, the torturing, the brutal beatings, like all of it. It's all of it. That's just one form of lynching. Now, let me give you a scale. So, during the Reconstruction era, at least 2,000 Black women, men, and children were victims of racial terror lynchings between 1865 and 1877. This rate was nearly 3 times higher than in later decades. But you gotta also think about this too, y'all. So, during enslavement, Black people were property. They were a commodity. If enslaved people were the property, the commodity, and they were killed, enslaved people would be losing out on money. Okay? So since they were no longer commodities, they were no longer property, and they were people, they didn't have nothing to lose. So the rate of deaths towards African American people, again, was stimulated by ego and vengefulness. It tripled within a decade. So lynchings were used by white Southerners, especially Confederate veterans and former enslavers, to terrorize Black communities and suppress their newly found freedoms and rights. During this time period, there was a lack of accountability. White perpetrators of these violent acts were rarely held accountable and were often celebrated instead. There was an undermining process. The wave of lynchings and racial violence ineffectively nullified constitutional amendments meant to provide equal protection and voting rights to Black Americans. There was a widespread impact. Beyond the documented killings, thousands more of Black people were assaulted, raped, and injured in racial terror attacks during this time period. And let's talk about the legacy of lynching during the Reconstruction era. This era of unchecked racial violence truly laid the groundwork for nearly a century of racial hierarchy, of white supremacy and systemic oppression that was followed. Now that y'all have an understanding of the impact of lynching during the Reconstruction era, let's talk about what Black people were doing after they were freed from enslavement. So let's go over some key facts about this period. During this time period, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments of the United States Constitution abolished slavery, and it granted citizenship to former slaves and gave Black men the right to vote. There was a rise in Black political participation. So with these new rights, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, Black people eagerly participated in the political process, and they registered to vote in large numbers, and they also ran for office. In fact, Mississippi, which had the largest Black population, saw a significant Black political representation during the Reconstruction era. And in 1870, Hiram Revels became the first African American elected in the United States Senate, and he represented the state of Mississippi. So, when we're talking about the rise of Black office holders, many African Americans were elected, not just at a local office, not just statewide, but even in federal offices during this time. And this included positions such as sheriffs, mayors, state legislators, and U.S. congressmen. So all this greatness happened so quickly. It happened so quickly once African American people were freed. But this progress was short-lived. As Reconstruction, remember, this is after the Civil War. The South was a mess. They had blew it to smithereens. It was a mess. So after the Reconstruction era ended and federal troops withdrew from the South, because the troops were responsible in some capacity to protect those who were freed. Remember that during Juneteenth, it was the federal soldiers who informed those people who were enslaved in the state of Texas that they were freed, because the plantation owners would not let them know. So once they withdrew from the South, a lot of white supremacists began to reassert control through both legal and extra legal means. So they were demonstrating lynchings. Why? Because them niggas was salty. They had lost all their money, all their property, and then these jokers who we wouldn't even teach how to read had the nerve and audacity to hop in the office and try to tell and set rules for everybody else, start businesses and making their own money. And because they black, they getting more business than me.
Negro, please.
They was mad. So what did they do? They took away the rights that they were just given. So within a year of these initial gains, many southern states, including Mississippi, began implementing laws and practices to strip African Americans of their newly free gained rights. Now, this included literacy tests, poll taxes in order to restrict voting, grandfather clause, which exempted whites from these restrictions, violence and intimidation tactics from groups like the Ku Klux Klan and the White Knights. And there were black codes and later Jim Crow laws that enforced segregation and limited the black civil rights. Now, as a result of these rights that were lost, there was, of course, a very long-term impact. Now, this reversal of Reconstruction era gains led to nearly a century of disenfranchisement and segregation for African Americans in the South until the Civil Rights Movement during the 1950s and 60s. Now, the rapid rise and falls of black political power during this and immediately after Reconstruction has had a crazy long impact on African American political discourse as well as activism, and it demonstrates both the possibility of progress and the persistent nature of systemic racism and white supremacy in American society. Now, these issues of lynching during the Reconstruction era truly represented a violent backlash against black emancipation and progress aimed at reimposing white supremacist control through terror and brutality. I really wanted to talk about Ida B. Wells' Red Record. Remember how we was talking about there were about 2,000 women, children, and men that were killed during the Reconstruction era. You have to understand that those documentations were simply based off of what people could find. And we'll talk about it more, but Ida B. Wells' Red Record was based off of what she could find in newspapers. That's not a true scope of what truly happened, what was truly covered up, and what people turned a blind eye to. Now, for those who don't know, Ida B. Wells' Red Record was a groundbreaking pamphlet, and it was produced in 1895, and it exposed the horrific reality of lynchings in the United States. Now, the work was so powerful, and it was a part of Ida B. Wells' tireless anti-lynching campaign, which she began in 1892 after her friends, 3 African American men, were lynched in Memphis. And for those who don't know, like I was talking about, after enslavement, a few of them, because I believe Ida is from Mississippi, they moved to Memphis. They opened up a grocery store, and it was more popular than a few of the other white-owned grocery stores in the area. And the white men got upset, and they lynched these 3 young men. That's ego, and feeling insecure and feeling threatened. And this is what prompted Ida B. Wells to start this collection of anti-lynching work. And the Red Record is probably the most famous one, but it's not her first pamphlet, and it definitely is not her last one. I believe she produced like 5 different pamphlets at the very least. Now, like I said, the Red Record really does meticulously document lynchings across the South, and she used white newspapers as her primary sources. And her research revealed the shocking scale of racial violence. More than 10,000 African Americans had been lynched in the South between 1864 and 1892. The pamphlet provided a comprehensive analysis of lynching, examining the alleged offenses, geographic distribution, and the extent of this brutal practice. Ida B. Wells' work truly did challenge the prevailing narratives about lynching, which a lot of people attempted to justify these acts as a form of justice against Black criminality. She argued that the rise of lynching was directly tied to white fears of growing African American political and economic power in the post-Reconstruction era. The Red Record was more than just a statistical report. It was a powerful call to action, urging anti-lynching advocates to spread awareness about the true nature and the scale of racial violence. And Wells believed that if the Christian world became fully aware of the alarming growth and the extent of this outlawry, they would find means to stop it. And this pamphlet was a crucial part of Wells' broader crusade against racial violence. Through her investigative journalism, through her speeches, and her writings, she tirelessly worked to expose the brutality of lynching, combat racial prejudice, and push for social and political change. The Red Record stands for a testament of Wells' courage, determination, and commitment to justice in the face of widespread racial terror. My God. Now, this is an example of when they go low, we go high. Beautiful example. And that was, as I'm thinking about it, one of the greatest tactics employs that the Black community used in order to gain sympathy and empathy and try to make people understand that what they were going through were wrong in their quest of gaining humanity or making people see them as true individuals. And they utilize Christians. And we will see this during the Civil Rights Movement. But prominently during this time period, you can see the work that a lot of African Americans did with the Quakers, those who were ultra religious in Christianity. Those who was just sitting up there and playing, they didn't care. So when I was doing this research, my question was, when Ida B. Wells wrote the Red Record, how did the Black community respond to finding out that during this time period, which was 1864 and 1894, that 10,000 African Americans had been lynched? Now, during the time period of 1865 and 1877, 2,000 had been lynched. But we add what? Hold on, I'm finding it for y'all. Another 20 years from 1877 to 1894, 20 years give or take, then you'll see a whole 8,000 added to that. That's not just men, that's not just women, but that's children.
And my children, not seeing their daddy every night, I'm staying here and there.
Children.
2 boys. They need me.
Children. Nevertheless, as a response to Ida B. Wells' Red Record, activism is how the Black community responded, because they was doing the respectability politics thing, you know. They had a baby, they said back, they said that the Red Record really did galvanize the Black community to take action against lynching, and many joined anti-lynching campaigns or organizations like the NAACP to fight federal anti-lynching legislation. So the second one was self-defense. Some Black communities organize self-defense groups to protect themselves and their neighborhoods from mob violence. My question always is that reactive or is that proactive? Because if it's self-defense, then that's preactive. If somebody, like, they gonna wait until someone come up to them and then react, I'd rather attack first and run and hide later. That's being proactive, but that's just me. But niggas was doing what they had to do, so you got to keep stuff like that in mind, okay? So next is migration. During this time period, we had the Great Migration, where many African Americans migrated north. They found themselves in places like Harlem, St. Louis, Chicago. Like, they got the fuck on down, while some of us stayed down here and endured it, and our bloodlines are still here as a reflection of that. The next one is documentation and exposure. Following Wells's example, many Black journalists and community leaders continue to document and publicize lynchings, countering false narratives in these white-owned medias. There was a cultural response. Black artists and writers incorporated the trauma of lynching into their work, creating powerful pieces of music like the song Strange Fruit to raise awareness and express their pain. And music lives on forever. They can, like, truly and honestly, in so many ways, even if they did get rid of the books in the schools, music will live on forever. We Shall Overcome, Strange Fruit, Mississippi, goddamn, like, music like that was created during time periods of struggle and strife and Black uprising. That shit'll never die, never, and it'll always be found in the music. Number 6 is community solidarity. Black communities often come together to support families of victims of lynchings, holding memorial services and raising funds for survivors. Education, a red record, and similar works were used to educate both Black and sympathetic white audiences about the true nature and scale of lynching. Lastly is the political engagement. The Black community increased its efforts to gain political power, seeing it as a crucial way of protecting their rights and lives.
Between 1862 and 1968, over 4,700 people were lynched in America, and 72% of those people were Black. This woman behind me made it her life's mission to ensure everybody knew the truth, even if it meant that she could end up as part of that statistic. This is Badass Black History, Ida B. Wells edition. It's March 1892 in Memphis, Tennessee. A dispute at a local grocery store leads to 3 Black men being arrested. Thomas Moss, Calvin McDowell, and Will Stewart, all African Americans and co-owners of the People's Grocery, were arrested without due process, and that night a mob of white men descended upon the jail, took the men, and brutally murdered them and left them in a field. One of the men was Thomas Moss, and he was friends with Ida B. Wells, who was living in Memphis at the time. Ida Bell Wells was born in 1862 as an enslaved person. After the Civil War and into adulthood, she gained a reputation as a humanitarian and a person who would stand up against segregation and for civil rights. As soon as Ida found out about this lynching, she penned an inflammatory and dangerous editorial in the local newspaper, the Free Press. Bro, this is what opened my eyes to what lynching really was, an excuse to get rid of Negroes who were acquiring wealth and property and thus keep the race terrorized. The mob would destroy the press and cause her to flee to New York City. This only fired her up as she continued to publicize the horrors of lynching. She wrote 2 pamphlets, was able to catalog over 241 lynchings. She even went to the president in 1898 to urge him to pass reforms against lynching. And she was a co-founder of the NAACP.
Beautiful people, let's talk about the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement. Now, the struggle for civil and social justice took place mainly during the 1950s and the 1960s for Black Americans to gain equal rights under the law in the United States. So here are 2 terms that you need to know. There's nonviolent resistance. This is a form of resistance. Now, nonviolent resistance was a strategy employed during the Civil Rights Movement inspired by Gandhi, and it was championed by Martin Luther King Jr. and involved these peaceful protest methods such as sit-ins, boycotts, and marches. And I really wanted to talk about the folk Highlander School when I talked about nonviolent resistance, because this is another example of when they go low, we go high. And we're going to see the effects of it. Okay, so like the folk Highlander School really played a pivotal role in the civil rights movement because it served as an important training ground and a meeting place for many key activists. The Folk Highlander School was located in Tennessee, and in the 1950s, Highlander began to shift its focus away from labor organizing to civil rights issues, and it recognized that racial inequality was crucial for achieving broader social justice as a whole. Because when we think about intersectionality, until the lowest and most oppressed group of individuals are free, liberated, and have full access to their full human rights, nobody would have access to their civil rights. So the folk Highlander School understood that. So what they did was that they hosted several training groups for several years to teach and employ different strategies and different methods during the civil rights movements when these activists were participating in different forms of nonviolent resistance. Okay, so in the 1950s, Highlander really had a shift in its focus, and there was an integration. Okay, so the folk Highlander School was segregated, but in 1944, they decided to fully integrate its workshops, and it became one of the few places in the South where Black and white activists could meet together and strategize together. And the purpose of this school was to create a training for desegregation. So even before the Supreme Court passed Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, the Folk Highlander School began running workshops to prepare community leaders for school integration. They did citizenship schools. So Septima Clark, working with Highlander, developed the citizenship school program to help improve literacy amongst Black adults and help them pass voter registration tests. And this program was later adopted by the Southern Christian Leadership Council. You want to know who attended this school? Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, John Lewis, Ralph Abernathy, anybody who participated in SNCC and CORE, they were at the Folk Highlander School. They was teaching them kids how to act when them folks spit up in their face, how to act when the police and the fire department turn fire hoses on them, how to act when you get shot down in the street like a dog walking from Memphis to Jackson, which is a very true story. Okay, they taught them how to suppress their natural urge and their natural passion, to suppress their anger, to suppress their humanity, and to endure the pain with the goal of creating a better tomorrow, right? Because I don't think it's natural. I know it's a bunch of niggas listening to this right now that won't even join the military because them doggone sergeants ain't finna yell up in their face. So imagine going into a restaurant to integrate a restaurant, sitting at a bar counter, they throwing stuff at you, they pouring drinks at you, they calling you everything but a child of God. They kick you, they beat you up. Just imagine people like Ruby Bridges, and I don't think Ruby Bridges went to the Highlander School, but you are responsible for the desegregation of a school, and you go in there and them folks calling you every type of slur, telling you you don't deserve to be there, telling you you're an abomination of God, and you have to swallow your pride. Everything that your mama has taught you as a child, that you is smart, you is precious, you is worthy, everything. And to continue to negate through this, you turn the other cheek in order for the greater good. I'm just thinking about the amount of trauma that one has to endure, not to even see the results during their lifetime, or to only see a small piece of results during their lifetime and giving it up for future generations and how long it took. Now, I want to talk about the music and the culture. Highlander played a significant role in adapting and spreading protest music like We Shall Overcome while becoming an anthem of the civil rights movement. But there was a controversy and the closure of the folk Highlander school because Highlander played such a significant role in adapting and spreading protests and civil rights workshops, and due to the folk Highlander school integrating their workshops and supporting civil rights, they faced intense opposition. So in 1961, the state of Tennessee revoked its charter and seized its property. However, it quickly reopened as the Highlander Research and Education Center.
When I was finally served at that counter, I thought it was by far one of the lousiest meals I ever had, and asked myself the question, is this what I put my life on the line for?
And when I think about the civil rights movement, I think about all that work, like all the trauma that was created. And the saddest part about it is the fact that the civil rights movement was more acceptable by the country, and that's why it is so popularized, especially during Black History Month or Martin Luther King's birthday. But the only thing that they remember Martin Luther King saying is that I had a dream. And then when you ask them jokers what dream he said, they really tell you that he really sat up there and had a nightmare on the mountain. So I guess what is so interesting about this is Martin Luther King's letter to Birmingham jail that he wrote when he was locked up in Birmingham. And towards the end of his letter, he asks a significant question, and it relates back to the ideology of respectability politics, in the sense of understanding that there is a time and place to act out. And Martin Luther King wrote, if now is not the time, then when is the time? And like, I feel like that is always the issue. People always want to wait because of fear, and they always want to push down. And it's like, you're not supposed to say things here, or you're not supposed to say it like that. But if not now, when? And if not me, then who? And that is the ideology, I feel like, that's been passed forward almost like a baton from generation to generation.
In his letter from a Birmingham jail, King rejected the idea that what was happening in Birmingham wasn't his business. Quote, I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. He pushed back against the idea that if Black people were just patient, equality would soon come. Quote, we know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. For years now, I've heard the word, wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This, wait, has almost always meant never. And then he made his famous assertion that the white moderate was an immense danger to the success of the civil rights movement. When he was finished, he had written nearly 7,000 words. And with the help of his attorney, those words were smuggled out of the jail and printed in newspapers and magazines across the country.
And this ideology really does embark on and put me in the mindset of our next topic, which is the Black Panther Party. Malcolm X and Huey P. Newton. These three entities, the Black Panther Party, Malcolm X, and Huey P. Newton, they really did represent more than a militant approach to the civil rights movement. They represented advocacy, the advocacy of armed self-defense, and they represented Black empowerment. And through their thoughts on resistance, demonstrations, and public reception, they really influenced this generation of activists, right? So when we're talking about Malcolm X and his thoughts on resistance, Malcolm X truly did reject nonviolent protests, and he advocated for Black nationalism and Black self-defense by the phrase, by any means necessary. Now, the Black Panther Party, who was co-founded by Huey P. Newton, also emphasized self-armed defense against police brutality and systemic racism. And they viewed the struggle for Black rights as a part of global anti-colonial and anti-capitalist movement. Now, when we're talking about how did these entities participate and demonstrate when it came to resistance, the Black Panther Party conducted armed patrols on monitor, and they monitor police activity in Black neighborhoods. And that is something that is still done to this day. Although the original Black Panther Party disbanded, the new Black Panther Party, who has chapters all throughout the nation, they still monitor and patrol Black neighborhoods and are on very high alert when there is political unrest, and I salute to them. They organize community service programs like the free breakfast for children, and they also did health clinics. And Malcolm X traveled everywhere, giving speeches about promoting Black pride and self-reliance. And again, the Black Panther used militant imagery and rhetoric to challenge the status quo. I mean, and in so many ways, it worked. But also, the devil had to work harder to remove them from history. When people think of the Black Panther Party, they think of just violence, danger. I feel like the Black bourgeoisie think that anyone who participates in the Black Panther Party or the new Black Panther Party is mentally ill, because in so many ways they're signing themselves up for a death wish, and they face way harsher results than those who participated in the civil rights movement if they did not result in sudden death. Like Huey P. Newton had to escape and go to Cuba. We saw what happened to Asaf Shakur, who was brutally beaten by the police. It was just a lot of negative attention. We saw what happened to Angela Davis, who had to represent herself, and because the police were lying on her, and that was something that happened several times for several members of the new Black Panther Party. But when you think of the Black Panther Party, you never think of people like Elaine Brown, who was the first Black woman to chair the Black Panther Party after Huey P. Newton left the Black Panther Party, and she was the one who was responsible for creating free lunch, for creating those free food programs. She was also responsible for helping their community in California to get their first Black mayor. I want to say it was Bobby Seals. They were responsible for creating this imagery that was not only in the Black Panther newspapers, but spread all throughout Black America, that represented common people, there was this newspaper article that I saw of this older black woman. Now, if it had been placed in like a white newspaper, it would have been a caricature. But she was a plus size, dark skinned, older black woman dressed in, you know, a moo hair pulled back, and she got I'm gonna go vote sticker, move or be moved sticker, and she represented everybody's grandmother, and how even in her age she would still get up and vote. And it reminds you of your grandmama, because we all have one. Even if you don't have a grandma, you have a figure like that in the community, or at least I would hope that you do. So they did so many things, and when they stepped out, they scared the public, and they still do to this day. Because while the black bourgeoisie is out there marching in skirts and pantyhose and stockings and pumps and pant leather shoes from Payless, they out there in uniform, all black, hat, boots, leather, shotguns. They not singing "We Shall Overcome." They like, did it, baby. Take that, take that, take that. They was just on a whole different vibe, and they commanded the room. They perpetuated fear and power, and it was just a whole different vibe. But they represent and they embody this whole idea of when they go low, we go lower, move over, or get moved. That was the original praise, baby. Shit, you better move over, or we gonna move you over. You better get out our way, baby. We marching to freedom, you know? So groups like these really did represent a shift from this nonviolent approach from early civil rights leaders, and it offered a more radical version of Black liberation that truly resonated with many who felt frustrated by the slow pace of change.
Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies. Everybody is here. As many of you know, last March, when it was announced that I was no longer in the Black Muslim movement, it was pointed out that it was my intention to work among the 22 million non-Muslim Afro-Americans and to try and form some type of organization or create a situation where the young people, our young people, the students and others, could study the problems of our people for a period of time and then come up with a new analysis and give us some new ideas and some new suggestions as to how to approach a problem that too many other people had been playing around with for too long. And that we would have some kind of meeting and determine at a later date whether to form a Black nationalist party or a Black nationalist army. There have been many of our people across the country from all walks of life who have taken it upon themselves to try and pool their ideas and to come up with some kind of solution to the problem that confronts all of our people. And tonight we are here to try and get an understanding of what it is they've come up with. Also, recently, when I was blessed to make a trip or pilgrimage, a religious pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca, where I met many people from all over the world, plus spent many weeks in Africa trying to broaden my own scope and get more of an open mind to look at the problem as it actually is. One of the things that I realized, and I realized this even before going over there, was that our African brothers have gained their independence faster than you and I here in America have. They've also gained recognition and respect as human beings much faster than you and I. Just 10 years ago on the African continent, our people were colonized. They were suffering all forms of colonization, oppression, exploitation, degradation, humiliation, discrimination, and every other kind of Asian. And in a short time, they have gained more independence, more recognition, more respect as human beings than you and I have. And you and I live in a country which is supposed to be the citadel of education, freedom, justice, democracy, and all of those other pretty sounding words. So it was our intention to try and find out what was our African brothers doing to get results so that you and I could study what they had done and perhaps gain from that study or benefit from their experiences. And my traveling over there was designed to help to find out how. One of the first things that the independent African nations did was to form an organization called the Organization of African Unity. The purpose of our organization of Afro-American Unity, which has the same aim and objective, to fight whoever gets in our way.
Moving right along to the period after the Civil Rights Movement, I really wanted to, again, help give you a scope of what's going on in the Black community during the Civil Rights Movement, so during the 1950s and 60s. And what happened was the tactics of white supremacy shifted as the mindset shifted. So instead of killing your average day-to-day bystander, the community, the government, they killed the Black leaders during this time period. Because, you know, if you got a hydra with 7 heads, you cut off the head. You got a snake, you cut off the head. Then the body lifeless, okay? So I just wanted to give y'all a list of the leaders, the lives that were lost during the Civil Rights Movement, during and after the Civil Rights Movement. Medgar Evers, who was an NAACP field secretary, was assassinated in 1963 in Jackson, Mississippi. James Chaney, who was a civil rights worker, murdered in 1964 in Mississippi, along with Andrew Goodman and Michael Schwerner. Malcolm X, a human rights activist, assassinated in 1965 in New York City. Sammy Young Jr., a civil rights and voting rights activist, killed in 1966 in Tuskegee, Alabama. Warner Dahmer, a civil rights and voting rights activist, murdered in 1966 in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Wallace Jackson, NAACP chapter treasurer, assassinated in 1967 in Natchez, Mississippi. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights leader, assassinated in 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. Fred Hampton, civil rights activist, killed in 1969 in Chicago, Illinois. Harry and Harriet Moore, NAACP activists, killed in 1951 in Florida. This predates the main civil rights era, but it was truly significant. Jamie Lee Jackson, civil rights activist, killed in 1965 in Marion, Alabama. George W. Lee, civil rights activist, murdered in 1955 in Belzion, Mississippi. And Herbert Lee, civil rights activist, killed in 1961 in Liberty, Mississippi. That's 12. And for a long time, the community was lost. And while we were lost, things started to shift. So after the death of all of these Black activists during the Civil Rights Movement, it placed a significant influence on the movement's strategies, and trajectory. There was an increased urgency of mobilization. The murders of these activists galvanized more people to join the movement and created a greater sense of urgency to push change. There was a shift in tactics. Some activists began to question the effectiveness of nonviolent resistance after seeing leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. assassinated, and this led to debates within the movement about the most effective strategies. There was a decentralization. The assassinations of prominent leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. highlighted the vulnerability of movements relying on a heavily charismatic figurehead. This influenced later movements like the Black Lives Matter to adopt a more decentralized leadership structure. Media attention. The brutal killings of activists, especially when publicized through photos and news coverage, helped draw national and international attention to civil rights causes. Legal pressure. Murders of activists but put pressure on the federal government to take action, leading to investigations and eventually civil rights legislation. And the inspiration of future generations. The sacrifices of slain civil rights activists continue to inspire and inform modern civil rights justice movements, providing historical context and motivation. Lastly, the focus on systemic issues. As the violence against activists persisted, it highlighted the deep-rooted nature of racial injustice, pushing the movement to address more systemic and institutionalized forms of racism beyond just legal segregation. Now let's move on. In the 90s, I feel like that's when my people really had learned them something. They had learned them a lesson. They had found them success. And you can really see, the shift from when they go low, we go high, to when they go low and send bitches to hell, we'll see, baby, we going to hell too. We're going, okay. So let's talk about the killing of Rodney King by the way of OJ Simpson. I feel like this is the greatest example before we get to the 2000s of when they go low, we go lower. The Rodney King incident and the OJ Simpson case were pivotal events in the 1990s that significantly impacted the Black community's approach to addressing racial injustice and highlighted the limitation of respectability politics. Now, Rodney King, a Black man, was brutally beaten by the Los Angeles police during a traffic stop. The incident was captured on video and widely broadcast, and it sparked these outrage riots across the nation. And when officers involved were acquitted, so that means they let them walk free. In 1992, it led to widespread riots in Los Angeles, and these riots were known as the 1992 LA riots. Now, this event, the Rodney King beating, brought police brutality and systemic racism in law enforcement to the forefront of national discourse, and it demonstrated that even when confronted with clear evidence of misconduct, the racial justice system often fails to hold law enforcement accountable for violence against Black individuals. This is the same location of the Black Panther Party, who was championing and trying to work on the same issue of police brutality. This is what, 2050, 40 years later, and the issue was still a very big issue. But inspired, because niggas got their get back by the way of Orenthal Jr. Simpson. Yeah. Orenthal, come on up here, boy. In 1994 through 1995, OJ Simpson, who was a former NFL star, he was tried for the murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. Now, the trial became a media sensation and a focal point of discussions about race, celebrity, and the American justice system, and that's another intersection. Now, Orenthal Sampson's acquittal, in 1995 was seen by many in the Black community as a rare injustice of the justice system working in favor of a Black man, particularly in light of the Rodney King verdict. However, it highlighted deep racial divides in how the case and verdict were perceived. You know, and I just find it so funny. This was like, these were a couple years apart. 3 years apart. And niggas was mad. They was mad, boy. And they said, we gonna get get back. We sick of this mess. So I guess they was just ready to just get back with anybody, because OJ probably wasn't the most deserving, but he got what he got. And they purposely and unanimously came together to give the not guilty verdict for Orenthal, and it really shook the nation. And I think this case was so pivotal, both the Rodney King incident as well as the OJ Simpson trial, because of media. Media is what really has saved a lot of people's lives, or it has provided justice, especially in the case of Rodney King. And it also makes you wonder if there were different forms of media, let's say during civil rights, during Reconstruction era, if a lot of people would still be here, or would they have received the justice, their due justice, like Emmett Till. Maybe if there was a camera around in Money, Mississippi, they would have been able to pin the murders on Carolyn Bryant, on those two white men. You know, maybe if there were police cameras around, maybe Emmett would still be here. So it was the media that truly influenced this. Seeing Rodney King being beat by the baton on TV, because this ain't social media. Jokers had like 12 good channels, and they all saw it. They all saw Orenthal going down the street in that white Bronco. They all saw it. They remember where they was on that day. I'll tell you that much. And they came together and they discussed it. And I guess that's what they all agreed on. The jury, they said, we finna let this nigga walk on behalf of our ancestors. He not black, he OJ, but he gonna be black today. Cause we getting our justice. We getting our just due. So
do you think that they're members of the jury that voted to acquit OJ because of Rodney King?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
How many of you think felt that way?
Oh, probably 90% of us.
90%? Did you feel that way?
Yes.
That was payback.
Uh-huh.
You think that's right?
Several days removed from a brutal dockside brawl in Montgomery, Alabama, where this now viral video shows a group of white men attacking a single black boat captain, assault charges have been filed against 3 of the alleged aggressors.
When it initially took place, the police department didn't have the luxury of the videos that we all have seen now. Now that we have more information, again, more charges are pending.
The videos certainly paint a vivid picture. After the initial altercation, members of the crew and community jumping in to defend the riverboat's co-captain, Damian Pickett. As you can see from this new footage, the fight quickly escalates. At one point, a man even swinging a folding chair. In police custody this morning, Richard Roberts, 2 other men, Alan Todd and Zachary Shipman, are expected to turn themselves in. All of them facing misdemeanor assault charges. None of the men have pleaded in the case yet, and NBC News has not been able to reach them for comment.
It definitely should never have even gotten physical to begin with.
For witnesses who watched from a riverboat that was attempting to dock, like Leslie Mae Horter, the 45 minutes police say the captain spent asking the pontoon owners to move their boat over a PA system was clearly in vain.
Could you hear what these guys were shouting back?
No, I could not hear from where, in my perspective, what they were shouting back. The attitude that they exude was the fact that you're not going to tell us what to do. We were here first.
But there's no doubt they were notified. They knew they were being asked to move.
Oh, they had ample opportunity to move their boat.
When asked about possible use of racial epithets or names, the police chief said the evidence they have does not currently meet the FBI standard for a hate crime.
There was a lot of, I've seen finger gestures and comments and innuendos made. Working with the local FBI, we did examine if there was enough to file hate crimes charges on this case.
And it's important to know that police right now are still soliciting videos from the public, so their investigation, guys, is not over at this point. As for that one witness, she said that the co-captain looked really shaken up after the fact, but once they got off the boat, he did appear to be okay. We have reached out to him, but so far have not heard back for comment.
He says we shouldn't celebrate Juneteenth. We shouldn't celebrate Martin Luther King Day. We should be working those days. It's called Ketanji Brown Jackson, an affirmative action hire. He's talked nonsense about George Floyd, and he said he'd be scared if a black pilot was on a plane. Does that not seem racist?
I don't know anything about that.
Then answer no. Does that seem racist? Is a yes or no question, Kyle.
After all the things I just told you, would you consider that hate speech?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Deflection! 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 Yeah! But yeah! Yeah!
I'm talking about.
I think your fake eyelashes are messing up.
No,
with your
ain't
reading.
nothing.
Hold on.
Listen.
Order.
Mr. Chairman, that's beneath even order of your committee. Ms. Crockett.
I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling. If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
A what now?
Chairman, I make a motion to strike those words.
I don't think that's
I'm trying to find clarification on what quality.
Chairman, motion to strike those words.
I had no idea what you just said.
We're not gonna do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just
you just voted to do it.
Y'all did it first, so you don't want to talk about
voted to do it.
Order.
I'm trying to get clarification.
Look at now you starting to get it. Now you starting to get it. You get what I'm saying now when I say my people is tired. My people is exhausted because it ain't even years, decades, for centuries. Because for 400 years we was enslaved. We haven't been free that long at all. They have been systemically hunted down, raped, murdered, pillaged, house burnt down. And they started telling us, do like the white Jesus did and turn the other cheek. And niggas said, I tried to walk away and I stumbled. They said, if you gonna take it there with us, we gonna take it there with you and we gonna drag it even further. And you starting to see that. Because we grew up listening. Because like African-American history is an oral history. So anyone, especially if you grew up down here in the South with your grandparents, with uncles that grew up during the Civil Rights Movement, if you was blessed enough to have great-grandparents or people who maintained their history and told you their history, you have a great understanding of what they went through in the 50s and 60s because they were, like my aunties and my mama, they were in their early 20s and early teens. They were my age during the Civil Rights Movement. So they were well aware of what the environment was like and what was going down. And they tired. And they want to do something about it. So if they can't do something the legal way, so we do something the illegal way. And truly, I don't see the problem. I don't. because you got to get your reparations. You got to get your give back any type of way. So now let's get to the modern day. Get to the modern day where my people have really been doing their biggest one. Yeah, I want to talk about the Montgomery Riverfront Brawl down there in Alabama. I tell you what, when I had got home, my sister looked at me, she said, "Sister, you seen each other down here in Montgomery? Y'all know I'm in Mississippi. Y'all know I'm in Mississippi." I said, "What them niggas over there doing? What they doing?" I tell you what, they was over there making my day. It put so much great joy in my heart to see the resistance. Now, the Montgomery Riverfront Brawl, it occurred August 5th in 2023 in Montgomery, Alabama. And what it did, it became a significant moment that relates to the phrase, "when they go low, we go lower," in several ways. The incident really highlights this shift of how some of the members of the Black community respond to perceived racial injustice and aggression. Now, let me give you a little background. So you can understand the fullness, girl. The altercation really began when the Harriet II riverboat, which was carrying 227 passengers, attempted to dock, but found its space occupied by a private platoon boat. The riverboat's black co-captain, the Honorable Sir Damien Pickett, tried to communicate with this little canoe, the little platoon boat, the little boat they could or wished it should. And its accompanants. They tried to talk to them and tell them to move their vessel. And this request and this man doing his job, because he was on the clock, it was met with hostility, and it included obscene gestures and a refusal to move. Now, let me tell you about that initial confrontation. When Pickett had went to shore to move the platoon boat, to shift the little canoe to the side, he was allegedly attacked by the white individuals on the boat. And niggas in the back, they had seen it, and they responded. The black bystanders and the black people on the Harriet II crew members, they came to Damien Pickett's defense, and they got down. It was a large-scale brawl. Now, the most memorable part of this was a young black man who has now been coined the Black Aquaman. That's what they calling him. That joker took off his shirt and he hopped up in that river and he swam across the river to join the fight in defense of Mr. Pickett. No white folk didn't even know niggas knew how to swim. They didn't even know that. Now, they thought we was all scared of the water. But then the Black Aquaman showed them. He saw the sign. And he came to their defense. Yes, they did. Now, the fight did end up escalating, and it intensified with more and more niggas coming to aid. And it included a black man raising his fist, using a folding chair as a weapon with the strength of 1,000 slaves to backhand some white individuals. And I seen that. I said, my God, that's powerful there. That really did. It really had motivated me to get back into my word and to start reading and studying and such. Now, how did my community respond? Well, we met that with great glee, great joy. We was gay with happiness. We was thoroughly excited. In fact, many black social media users celebrated the incident as an example of the community coming together in a way to defend one of their own against perceived racial aggression and violence. It also sparked a lot of discussions on self-defense. The incident sparked debates about the right and necessity of black people to defend themselves physically when faced with aggression. You know? And there's a lot of historical context, and I'm sure you can see it now with all this conversation and convolution we've been having about the Black Panther Party, about the Civil Rights Movement, about all of the things But, and, you know, many people view the brawl in the context of Montgomery's history as a key site in both the slave trade as well as the civil rights movement. And they critique the politics of respectability, because some saw the incident as a rejection of the idea that Black people should always respond to negativity with restraint. You know, I really did love that. I really did. It really had turned me on. I said, I love my people. I'm ride or die, baby. I'm here with it. We was gonna start us a jail fund for that young man. They were raising money on TikTok to get them jokers from up out of jail. And you know, it just really, it did. It warmed in my heart. It really did. Now, next, I'm gonna talk about Kyle Rittenhouse. Y'all know he was in Memphis in March of 2024. This year, he was down there in Memphis. Memphis, the most beautiful land in the world. There's no world more beautiful than Memphis. Okay? Now, I know some of y'all don't know it because it's not even in the big media, right? I had to go to a local news outlet to even find the documentation on this story, but luckily your girl got a degree in history, and I got it all together. See, for those who don't know, Kyle Rittenhouse, he gained his fame and notoriety in 2020 for shooting 3 men and killing them during unrest in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And he was acquitted in 2021 on the claim of self-defense, okay? So he is a gangster. He's a thug, right? He don't know how to keep his hands, feet, and other objects to himself. And he got off because of a loophole. Again, another example of systemic injustice, because niggas wouldn't have got off that easy. Now, let me tell you about some of the events of Kyle's little trip to Memphis. He was invited by the University of Memphis, their Turning Point USA chapter. Okay, those is the white bigots with the guns, and they love their guns, and they got the flags that say, "Don't tread on me." Or they got the bumper stickers that say, "Do you follow God this closely?" And then when you get to their house, they say, "This property is protected by gun security surveillance and beware dog." Like them, that's them group of people. They still chew dip and shit. So, the reason why Kyle Rittenhouse was invited by the University of Memphis is because, for some reason, the Turning Point USA wanted to hear his opinions on his right to bear arms, what happened in 2020 when he went to jail, and his views on gun violence. You see, instead of treating him like a criminal, they turned him into a celebrity. Well, you know, if you want to play games, we can go to Toys R Us. Now, he went to go speak in the UC Theater over there at the University of Memphis, but they I don't know who put this event together, but they did something real stupid. They made them tickets free. They were free 99. They didn't even get no profit off of this. And I call it stupid, not because the tickets were easily accessible, but because the students of the university and many of the local residents of Memphis reserved all them free seats, ensuring that many people would not be able to attend his little Klan rally. And you know, you also got to think of the context. Memphis is a majority Black town. Memphis was also one of the key spots during the civil rights movement. Memphis also had issues. Y'all must never heard of the Memphis Massacre. Y'all don't know y'all history, so you don't know why it wouldn't be a good idea to bring Kyle Rittenhouse, a murderous thug. Is he considered a serial killer? Because I put him on that label too. Down there to Memphis to talk about his right to carry a gun, how he killed 2 people after his mama dropped him off in her 2020 Subaru, because love makes a Subaru, and his views on gun violence. Now, one of the sweet young girls they had got up there and they said, young lady, why y'all reserved all them free tickets so them folks could come up there and enjoy Kyle Rittenhouse and his little Easter speech? She said, quote, the goal is to take up space, but mostly to take up space from people who have harmful ideologies. And I said, yeah, that's it. Now, you tell me what y'all think the result of that was. You take little pale Kyle Rittenhouse past South the Equator to Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis. And y'all say you go up there and you tell them folks who you is, and they gonna accept you for who you are, because God loves America. And he go down there with all the niggas. Niggas that listen to Project Pat, they is listening to Fully Old. Who them niggas listening to? Glorilla. Who else? Gucci Mane. And you thought you was gonna leave at least not embarrassed. Oh no. There was a crazy amount of backlash from the students, and they also had a protest outside the venue. And those who reserved their free tickets either disappeared or they voiced their disapproval or they just didn't attend. And the university defended allowing the event on the First Amendment grounds. Now, Kyle Rittenhouse, he shit his pants and he went home. And it's because he left the stage when he was questioned about his views on racism. And then he got on the social media and he said, it was great, guys. I had so much fun. And he got up there lying about the fact that them niggas booed him off the stage and roasted him to shreds. Oh, ketchup packet by the ass. Oh, white running refrigerator built by the ass. That nigga look like he constipated. He can only eat cottage cheese looking ass. Boys, your shoes getting a divorce. Why is they so separated looking at? I know they was on his neck. And you know, I love to see such things like that. It's always moments like this that bring my people together. And and there was a great example of that. It really did put a little twinkle in my eyes. It added an extra pep to my step, because my people, they gonna take it there, because you gotta hold people accountable. And if they not gonna regulate their own people, well, somebody gonna have to if it getting out of hands. So I said, yeah, I like that there. I love it when my people come together. That's power. My God, today. And of course, many other students, because even if those students who went to the university were not Black, most college students are progressive and will not agree with those types of ideologies and mindset. So the students strongly oppose his presence. So we want to know who signed the paperwork. U of M? Huh? Then y'all got all these non-students showing up to support Kyle Rittenhouse. What type of sense do that make? This is what they say. Listen to what they say. This is what they say right here. The left wing has pointed Kyle out as a murderous psychopath. I do disagree. This man right here, what's his name? Dean Mascara. I'll spell it. Musara, who is not a student at the university, but attended to support Kyle Rittenhouse. Well, what the fuck you doing up there then if you're not a student at the college? You ain't got no business up there, boy. You better take that back to honky tonk land. We don't want to hear that. Now, lastly, but definitely not least, the one example of when they go low, we go low. It's going to be the Honorable Jasmine Crockett. Because in the face of the politics of respectability, that bitch still got low. Jasmine got up there and said, swing low, sweet chariot. I'm finna drag this bitch home, swing low. And I really love that. I watched it. I kept it on repeat. You know, and I might get that tatted on my lower back. Well, let's talk about it. Now, there was an incident between Marjorie Taylor Greene, also known as MTG, and Jasmine Crockett, and a recent example that relates to the phrase, when they go low, we go lower, which is a shift in the approach of confronting perceived injustice and disrespect, particularly within the context of political discourse. Now, let me give you a little background. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a white trash, redneck, no good Republican congresswoman from Georgia. She was a QAnon supporter who was recently expelled from the Congress, okay? She is known for her controversial statements and confrontational style. She is also known for her split ends and her bad-built butch body. Now, on the other hand, Jasmine Crockett is a Democratic congresswoman from the state of Texas who is known for her advocacy, her civil rights, and her social justice work. Now, the incident occurred during a House Oversight Committee hearing on July 2024. Marjorie Taylor Greene accused Crockett of being racist, which we don't know how a black woman can be racist. She can be anti-black. She can be prejudiced. But Jasmine Crockett in and of herself does not have the ability to be racist because she does not hold any type of power to oppress a group of people. Nevertheless, in response, Jasmine Crockett did not back down, nor did she apologize. Instead, she very forcefully read that bitch her right, and she defended herself and countered Marjorie Taylor Greene's accusations with her own criticisms. And, you know, it's a shame that Marjorie Taylor Greene would go up into the highest court, go into Adelaide, go up there around some of the, in the most free country of the world. That's what they say. Around the representative of the many states that make up the United States of America, and sit up there and cut up and clown as much as she did when she got up there. But before they released her from her job and her duties, the Lord instructed Jasmine Crockett to do his work, and that is what she did. That's what she did. And I know it was a lot of black people, the same black people that was probably upset that Will Smith slapped the taste out of Chris Rock's mouth, that got mad. Jasmine didn't have no business saying all that in front of the bitch. And what you was gonna do? You was gonna turn your cheek. That's why you niggas is embarrassed. All that cooning and clowning and cutting up for the white man. Jasmine did what she was supposed to do, and she ain't even cursed. And honestly, if you ask me, she didn't do enough. Cause a bitch should have been thrown in there somewhere. Bad built bitch, butch body. A bitch was supposed to be in there, but I did appreciate the creativity, the alliteration of the consonants, the bad, and you know, it just really bounced off your tongue. You know, it even bring my taste buds great joy. You know, and it's just a very powerful thing that really should go down in the history books, since they just put anything up in there right now. You know, I do think this is a significant chapter of the Black history, but an even greater example of when they go low, we go lower. Okay, so the question is how did the community react? The incident and Crockett's response garnered significant attention, particularly on social media and in political circles. The reactions were mixed, but generally fell along partisan lines. Many people supported Jasmine Crockett. Many people criticized the exchange. There were a lot of debates on the tactics. Many conversations started on racial dynamics. But it created a shift in the approach. It represents a departure from the go high philosophy, instead meeting perceived aggression or disrespect with an equally or more forceful response.
Shout out to the slaves.
Yeah, shout out to the slaves. You feel me? Shout out to Harriet Tubman. That
Shout
was
out
my
to she's
bitch.
a real nigga.
Yeah, shout out to them Mississippi niggas. Yeah, shout out to them Mississippi niggas. Yeah, big penitentiary tractor dragging ass niggas. Yeah. Want to whisper. And they don't talk loud. They whisper. Dangerous niggas whisper.
And shout out again to all those people who hate my guts.
Y'all are doing a justice and an effort to the world. Keep breaking these men down one at a time.
Shout out LGBTQ. You are obsessed and sick.
And we are back with the Big Black Shout Out, the blackest shout out in the world. The Big Black Shout Out is an opportunity to let Black communities, make a little money, help it circulate through the Black community, and for Black business owners to find Black-owned hidden gems. Now, it's a few people I want to give a shout out to, a few entities, corporations, nonprofits, and the things. So, first, I wanted to give a shout out to the Ward 1 Alderman, to Thomas T.J. Mayfield, who just was elected into the city of Vicksburg. That is one of my advocacy partners. He a young brother. He about my age, and he down there running the city. Shout out to him. They tied during the first time they voted, and he had to go back and do a runoff, and that joker won. And I just loved it for the Black community. So shout out to you, TJ. You doing big things. Now, secondly, I would like to give a shout out to Mississippi Votes. They are having a 2024 inaugural Summer Youth Policy Institute. It is time to register for Mississippi Votes Summer Youth Policy Institute. It is a 5-day stay at Millsap College with many engaging learning opportunities, from trips to museums across the state, to policy workshops, mock sessions to help young teens develop advocacy and leadership skills. And the people who attend will be also able to lead with a better understanding of democracy through hands-on training. Now, it is live now. If it's still live by the time that, by the time this episode airs, make sure you sign the kids up. If not, wait till next year. There are scholarships available for the youth and the teens down here in the great state of Mississippi. So if you tired of your baby on their Xbox, on their PlayStation, I don't know if the little kids still use the Wii, but if you want them to get out and do something important that might not only change the trajectory of their lives, but change the community around them, I suggest you get that ass in the hoopty and sign that baby up for the 2024 inaugural Summer Youth Policy Institute. Now, I wanted to give you guys a shout out. The Southern Poverty Law Center, the regional chapter of the great state of Mississippi, I wanted to give y'all a save the date. We are getting ready for the Road to 60 Organizing and Training Summit. It will be located in Jackson, Mississippi, and it will be held from August 15th through the 17th. For those who don't know, it is the 60th anniversary of the Freedom Riders traveling through the state of Mississippi and also being put into jail. And it's also time to vote. So if you want to celebrate, we will be having fun festivities, foods, entertainment, conversations, debates. Save the date. That's going to be August 15th through 17th, located in Jackson, Mississippi. Is there anybody else I'm supposed to be shouting out? Well, I guess not. If you are someone that you know has a business, knows an organization that needs more promotion, would like promotion yourself, or you just want to give somebody a shout out, make sure you are reaching out to me at the Afrocentric Podcast. That's Afrocentric Podcast at gmail.com. Yeah, y'all like that there? That's that freestyle too when they go low. I've been getting into it with a lot of Caucasian people in real life and online, and that's why I just immediately just drag it to hell. I just expose them and go on about my day, because I don't be bothering nobody, but they be intimidated by me, much like they predecessors and my ancestors, But that's okay. y'all gonna learn to stop messing with the righteous. Because the righteous avail of much. Okay? My community is tired of playing with y'all. And they is coming down with a mighty hammer. Now, I don't want nobody to confuse this episode with inciting violence. I'm just going over a streak of statistics, some patterns throughout history and throughout modern day, and how people are reacting to it. But I can't sit here and lie and say that it does not bring me much glee and much excitement. So with that in mind, I just want to thank you all so much for choosing to be Afrocentric today. Make sure you remember that Black lives matter. Make sure you listen and protect Black women and children. And the only thing you must do in this lifetime is be Black and die. Now here at the Civilized, at the Afrocentric podcast, we just civilized people. We be having those civilized conversations. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
When they go low, I go lower. And so far it done worked. And I'll be 64 in September. If you wanna play with a child or wanna play a game, go to Toys R Us. I'm not the one. Thank you.
It was funky that Neva said, bitch, when they go low, we go to hell. Bitch, I'm Lucifer. Bitch, I'm the fallen angel.
Well, you know, when they fuck with me, I go a little bit lower than Lucifer.
What, 80s?
Past that.
Event Horizon. Space, bitch.